Welcome back, and thank you for joining us here on Therapists Uncut. Today, I am not the squirrel. I have a very squirrely co-host today in Alyssa Najera.
I cannot sit still. I'm not even sure why.
Neither can her brain today. It's a little all over the place. So today we are talking about apologies and how to do it and how not to do it. So I thought it was kind of funny. We could name the episode "How to Apologize the Quote Right Way." And obviously there's some sarcasm there. And yet also there is a lot of ways not to apologize.
So we're going to go through how not to apologize. And apparently there's also a formula on how to apologize. So Nikki is going to enlighten us on that formula as well.
It's all from the couples therapy work. It comes in.
See, I don't see couples. There's the problem.
We work on this a lot with couples.
Welcome to the Therapists Uncut Podcast, where off-the-clock therapists who happen to be friends share their uncensored thoughts about real life. Join us weekly in spreading positivity and making mental health relatable through casual conversation, inspirational stories, and real talk with friends who happen to be therapists. Please welcome your co-hosts, Nikki Young and Alyssa Najera.
All right, today we are focusing on apologies. And if you have not done so yet, head over to the website, therapistuncut.com, for all of the episodes you can imagine, and for show notes and mental health resources. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure you like, subscribe, and please share this with somebody that you think could benefit from it. We're so giddy this morning. I can't figure it out.
It all started when I walked in the door and Alyssa says, "You're so light today." Now, those of you that watch this, Anthony does a lot of work up here so that I don't blend into our previously white background, but I am here, watch, look. See? White as her shirt. I'm very light. So I was very confused as to why she felt like today was the day to comment on my very fair complexion when I'm always fair. And then she was just apparently referring to how much I was not caring. And I'm squirrely now.
And Nikki walks in with a light wardrobe, and Nikki's brain sick.
And by light, she did not mean color. She meant apparently I only brought one wardrobe change, and that was a light load.
So for those of you who normally join us, we can usually stay on task because we have a producer and director like constantly keeping us focused. I'm trying to maintain my composure right now, Nikki.
She's not here today. Can you tell?
Not here. Director is absent today because she needs some time to do whatever she's doing. So we're going to do our very best to stay on track for y'all and come back to apologies. All right.
We apologize to you, the listeners, for our tangents. All right. Who all has been on the receiving end of a shitty apology that doesn't even classify as an apology, but the other person feels as though they've done what they need to do?
Yeah, apologizer would argue it was a very effective apology.
I like that. Apologizer.
We have the apology
word.
G and apologizer. Apology.
Let's make it a word.
Probably not.
The apologizer. So who's heard this? I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you're pissed off at me. What the hell? That's not an apology. That's blame. It's putting it on the person that you hurt, intentionally or unintentionally, and it's making them responsible for how you made them feel.
And to be clear, you are not responsible for anybody else's feelings. You are responsible for your actions and your behaviors and things that come out of your mouth, but you're not responsible for how anybody else feels. And Nikki mentioned blaming. So there's a very clear way to have statements that are accountable for how we feel, or blaming statements. So there's an appropriate time to use the word you, but when you say...
It's usually not in an apology.
It's usually, yes, not in an apology. I'm sorry you feel that way.
I'm sorry you're pissed off.
And then it makes you want to smack the other person. We don't encourage violence, by the way. Control these emotions. But let's talk about a correct
It's a whole other
way.
episode. Control those emotions.
Controlling emotions, yes.
Oh, there's a lot there.
So how do we control our emotions enough in these kinds of situations if you are the apologizer to be accountable for the things that you have done or said or maybe failed to do? And not blame the other person.
Defensiveness comes into it a lot. All right, we feel defensive. Sometimes we have done something hurtful, whether it's intentional or unintentional. We've done something hurtful that has caused an emotional response in the other person. Sometimes it's what's going on with the other person. Maybe we truly didn't do anything that elicit or in our minds should have elicited that response, and maybe objectively, there was not much harm done, but the other person's in a state where it definitely upset, hurt, inflicted some form of emotional damage. I think it's not uncommon for there to be defensiveness in that situation, right? Well, why should you be upset? But when you give those fake ass apologies, it doesn't do a darn bit of good.
You said fake ass apology, but you stumbled over
damn
darn.
I did.
I have, I guess, my own formula for apologizing, but I actually don't. I think it's super hard for me to do it, too. I really try to focus on nonviolent communication. Huge word for these 3 steps that I teach everybody, and I know that we've talked to you guys about before. But it's 1, stating the observable fact. 2, how I feel. And how I feel is not a run-on about, like, the last 10 years of wrongdoing this person has done. Very short and sweet. Find some feeling words. And then 3 is what I need.
When I work with couples, the formula we use is similar, right? You're talking about nonviolent communication. We're going to take those principles and morph them a little bit into, it's pretty straightforward, and a formula for apologizing if you're finding yourself struggling. You're always going to want to take ownership, all right? Starting with the I statements. And use your own language here, right? We don't want these scripted apologies, but I apologize. I feel badly. I am sorry, whatever fits best with your lingo. You're really taking ownership. You're giving some form of apology language. And then you're being specific on what you're apologizing for. And what you're apologizing for is not how the other person feels. It's not how the other person, it's nothing about the other person. We're keeping it on the I. Let's say I had insulted Alyssa's shoes this morning. I did not, but let's say they're nice shoes. They're quite nice, actually.
Thank you.
Like if I wore feminine clothing, I might I'd wear those shoes. They're very nice shoes. I, Alyssa, am sorry that I asked you why you were wearing those shoes with that outfit today. So I said this, right? I made that statement. Now, maybe I didn't have any intentions. Maybe I don't know, didn't mean anything negatively, but maybe I hurt Alyssa's feelings. So then here's where you can switch to the you at the end here. However, we are not shifting blame in this moment. We are validating her experience. So I apologize that I made a comment about your shoes that made you feel insecure. Because then we are showing that we have some comprehension of how the other person's feeling and help them feel heard, seen.
Validation is a beautiful thing, by the way.
Almost as beautiful as those shoes.
I show you, but it's like, I really can't. There you go. You got a little glimpse. If you're watching this video on YouTube or IGTV, you got a glimpse of the shoes. But if you notice, Nikki's very focused on the I statement. And this is, I told Nikki I kind of wanted to incorporate this in whatever we recorded today because it's a big deal for me and for a lot of people right now. It's like there's this loss of humanity that is happening and growing exponentially, which is also why we did an episode on catching acts of kindness. So if you haven't caught that episode yet, go back and do so. It's a good one. But there's just little things that are happening. It's like all of us are activated either in the workplace or at dance or whatever activities that you do, that when we're activated, we're now reacting all over everybody else. And then vice versa.
I like that. Reacting all over everybody else.
We
right?
sure are. And then it feels awful when somebody's reacting on you because you're like, what'd I do? I don't even know what happens right now. So being able to be accountable, you know, we love self-awareness and accountability for something that you did or said or failed to do, and then following up with a genuine apology can do so much in the world right now. I'll talk about my relationship. This is something that I often apologize for. Y'all know I'm back in EMDR therapy. So I am very good at overreacting to things. I am aware. My husband cannot contain his laughter at the moment. He is behind the camera. But I am aware. And that awareness doesn't come immediately sometimes. Sometimes it takes some time. But maybe what I will do is say, hey, husband, I was thinking about our conversation a couple days ago, and I realized I overreacted and I raised my voice. I will work on that, and I'm sorry. Notice I almost said should, but should is not a very good word to use. So I did not say should. I said, do not shit on yourself. I will work on that. Now this is like a pattern where you're constantly apologizing yet making no effort to make changes. That could be a problem. But if you are genuinely going to work on changing a behavior, especially if it's with your partner or with your kids, be accountable and apologize.
Yeah. And I think within the context, Alyssa gives a good example of having reflected on something she did or said. I think that oftentimes when we could and could be apologizing, we as humans are using that time to formulate our argument for why we shouldn't have to apologize because we didn't X, Y, or Z. All right.
Which is that defense wall coming out. And what in the world is that defense wall protecting? Think about it. Also, when we apologize...
smugness there. Think about it.
I don't know if I'm smug. Okay.
I apologize if my use of the word smug was offensive in any way.
Oh, I thank you. It was not. It was not, but thank you. I appreciate it. And when we apologize, especially if you are a parent or if you are an adult around other children, maybe you work at a school or a daycare, whatever the environment may be, imagine what you are teaching and modeling for the children around you who are constantly learning, not just from the things that they hear, but learning from the behaviors of others too. You are constantly teaching. So you were teaching them to be accountable. You were teaching them to use I statements and avoid blaming statements. I mean, that's not the language you tell them, but that's what they're learning. And you're teaching them to be good. I feel like being accountable and apologizing is being a good human. Part of it, at least.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about, right? Being a good human, whether this is in your place of work, to colleagues, to supervision, to good friends, siblings, spouses, partners, children. And as we were recording this episode, I think I found myself thinking more about peer-ish relationships or relational marital or partner relationships. But when you brought that up about kids, that's an excellent point because obviously they're little sponges and they're taking everything in. So if you're modeling how to effectively apologize, you are going to help your kids so much as they grow, right? Because that's one less thing maybe that they're going to have to put intentional learning to. Maybe they'll pick it up along the way. Mm-hmm. One of those good habits.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to clear my throat and a thought came in at the same time. That was a very awkward noise. So if you can think about when you were a kid and there was an adult in your life, whether it was a parent, an older sibling, or a teacher who constantly had the do as I say, not as I do motto, or the I'm never wrong, but I'm always right motto.
I've never heard of that one.
I'm never wrong, but I'm always right. I'm never right, but I'm something along those lines. You can, just think of the message that sent you every single time when you were like, you definitely were the one who did this. That was not my fault. But they failed to take accountability. Like, you don't want to be the person that sends that message. So teach the people around you, teach your supervisees, your children, yourself that, we're all human. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we do react, but if you can think back and be accountable for that behavior, then I would encourage you to do so. And I would say sometimes people are like, oh, it's too far gone. It already happened. I don't want to come back to it. But I always encourage people to start with, hey, I was thinking about, or I've been thinking about when this happened, and open up the conversation. And truly, at the end of the day, after you give your genuine apology, again, not a fake ass apology, what that person does with it is up to them, and it's out of your hands. Yeah. But at least you can apologize.
Mm-hmm. And that concept of has too much time passed. And a lot of what we're talking about today is something that we work on in couples sessions with clients. And I would say there's really no such thing as too much time having passed before you wrap back around on something like this, because otherwise that time will pass and all of these little or not so little things will just accumulate and build up, right? So that's an excellent introductory phrase that Alyssa suggested. Hey, I was thinking about, was reflecting on, there might be certain situations of safety is involved or something along those lines, but overall I would say that there's never too much time that's elapsed to at least do your part. Whether that person responds or not is up to them. That's their right, their autonomy. But as you were talking about kids, I have this vivid memory. Like, I can tell you exactly what street and I was young. I don't know, I'm terrible with timelines, but maybe 6-ish. And I remember exactly where I was, on what road, on what portion of what road. And I don't even remember what had happened, but my mom had done something that she felt was worthy of apologizing for. I have no idea what it was. And we were going somewhere. So maybe she was frustrated with me for taking, I have no idea. And I have this vivid memory of her saying, "Hey, Nick, I apologize for," again, don't remember what. Just because adults are adults doesn't mean adults don't make mistakes. And for whatever it is, I apologize. And here's what I should have done differently. And I remember as a kid being in the back seat having this moment, like an adult just apologized to a kid. And that has stuck with me this whole time. Right. And it was such a powerful learning experience, teaching moment for my mom, I guess. I don't think she intended it to be that, but it stuck with me because that one moment really set the tone for my views on apologizing to those around us.
I remembered, by the way.
What did you remember?
I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong.
Ah, that makes more sense.
Yes. Now
I'm with you now.
But again, just thinking about what we learned as kids from the grown-ups that we were around, or the peers that we were around that refused to apologize. And then actually what we were learning when a grown-up did apologize, like in that moment. Nikki doesn't remember the details, but she was sent the message and she received the message that grown-ups apologize because grown-ups make mistakes too.
Mm-hmm. And I want you, the listener, to think for a moment about times when you have felt genuinely heard and received a genuine apology and how you felt. As opposed to those moments where you get those fake-ass apologies, as we've apparently dubbed them, and how that feels. And so for some people, this is going to be easy. It's a change in language. It's mindfulness. But for some people, this is going to be really difficult. Mm-hmm. Especially at different times, right? I'm throwing my wife under the bus. It's very rare, but when she is in a rather reactive state, and I share that, hey, at times she has been known to say, "I'm sorry that you felt that way." And then she's like, "Gosh dang it," right? So it depends on where we're at and what point in our day, our life, whatever it is, right? But there's going to be times where this is difficult. And there's going to be times where it challenges our sense of, well, we really want to resort to the defensiveness and how it feels for us to have to. This is hard for us. This feels icky to us, right? But in those moments, I want to challenge you to pause and think about the amazingness that can come from it. Because I would hope that we've all at some point been on the receiving end of a genuine apology. And it can do so much for relationships.
Our last episode, or not last episode, but one of the episodes we released in season 3 was how to make good friends. And I think at some point in that episode, we also talked about how to be a good friend. So being able to be accountable and apologize in a friendship is so important. And and Nikki just said, I don't remember how you said it, but something like, if you're around people who do that, or what did you just say about that?
Just thinking about how you feel when you have received a genuine apology versus moments when you've not, and think about how you related to those different relationships in those moments.
And if you are listening to this and you're like, I don't think I get those at all, very often, well, consider the people whom you are around and maybe consider expanding that network and evaluating if the relationships you have in your life are healthy and beneficial for you overall. Because this is one small thing that we can do to kind of bring back the humanity that some of us, well, I'll just speak for myself, that I feel like we're losing in the world kind of slowly. And as Nikki was talking, I kind of felt, if you're watching this, you might have saw my eyes drift away because
I was boring her.
Because I was thinking about, yes, this podcast is to make mental health relatable. This podcast is to validate you and to hopefully help you smile sometimes. I mean, I really do hope you feel like you're a part of this conversation with us. But maybe part of this podcast, too, is to help bring back those small moments of humanity where we can. Because we're all human and we deserve that.
Mic drop.
Oh, I thought it was a fist pump. I was about to go with it and then the hand open.
Let's just end it there. All right. So on paper, this is really simple, right? It's formula. Is that a word? Formulaic? I don't think that's
potentially.
Archaic is a word for, I don't know. On paper, it's real simple. It's not so simple to enact this in real life when we've got so many different contributing factors, but it is something very specific that you can focus on that can do wonders for the health of your relationships. So, as always, we thank you for joining us here. I'm Nikki Young. This is Alyssa Najera with Therapists Uncut. If you have not, like, subscribe, share. If you listen to this, don't be passive aggressive with this episode, okay? So if you listen to this and you're thinking about somebody who, they never, don't just send this to them without context, right? Maybe have a conversation. If you can effectively and healthily use this episode in your relationships, awesome. But don't use us to be passive aggressive, okay?
Agreed. I hadn't even thought about that.
I just then thought of it.
If there is one thing you took from this episode, please think about it, reflect on it, and let it stay with you. Hopefully it was something productive and effective. And help spread kindness, help bring back humanity, and keep helping us make mental health a part of your everyday conversation. And come back not next week, in 2 weeks for a new episode of Therapists Uncut. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining Therapists Uncut, a production of AMP Smart Business. To learn more about Therapists Uncut and stay up on upcoming episodes, please subscribe and follow us on social media. As a reminder, although the Therapists Uncut co-hosts are licensed therapists, they are not your therapists. This podcast is not intended to substitute professional mental health counseling. If you need professional therapy, please contact your local provider or primary care provider. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Therapists Uncut.